Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast. I'm your host, Fionn Malloy, joined this week by Rian and Dara. Lads, welcome into the show. We got a nice bit of breaking news to chat about just before we came on air, so that helps us kick the show off in a nice, easy way. We don't know the showrunners not going mad in the background, firing notes on us, telling them what to talk about next. Before we get going, check in on your... Yeah, we do. It's my third and fourth personalities that send texts to me via myself. And Mirren shouting from the back room as well, giving me notes because she's the one that really knows about football in this house. So I just take what she tells me on Sundays, and that's why you see me looking down at my notes so often. But yeah, Ryan, check in on you and your footballing woes. Carolina Panthers still depressing? We haven't seen them for a while.
Still depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a better performance than what we would have seen with the Bryce Young show. So I'm still happy enough. But yeah, that team is beat up right now, and it doesn't show signs of getting better. I guess the main thing that I'm vaguely positive about is we haven't traded away all of our stars yet, and we have done that in previous years when things have not been going so well. So yeah, obviously there's a plan in place to keep these guys around and maybe look to the future. So here's hoping.
Dara, what's life like in the Seahawks fandom at the moment? Tough loss last weekend. Or the weekend just
I was
gone.
just going to say there to Reen, you need stars first before you can trade them anyway. But in Seahawks side of things are...
Derby day as it was. Didn't go your way, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Fan bases losing their mind. I don't know why. Listen.
We know why.
They got beat. Well, look, yeah. They got beat by a 49ers team who are in their Super Bowl window. They got beaten by a Lions team who are definitely in their Super Bowl window. I can only look back at that Lions game and thank my lucky stars that our team has fight and they're not the Cowboys. And then they got beat by a Giants team that people didn't expect them to lose. But when you see what the Giants can do defensively against even teams like the Bengals, is it to be expected? No, still no. But it kind of makes the hurt a little easier. If it was the other way, like most people would think that if the season started, looking back at the season, or before the season started, if we were 3-3 at this point, everything would be grand. The fact that it's 3 losses in a row was the big problem.
Yep, the slides are always a dangerous thing. You got to work the way out of them. But as you say, two pretty good teams in that slide. So I don't think it's the same as if you'd have lost kind of Panthers, Jags, Pats back to back to back. I think that's a much bigger worry. Anyway, we said we'd kick off the show with the breaking news. Just before we came on, there was the breaking news that Amari Cooper is leaving the Browns, joining the Bills. Bills probably a little bit shorter than they have been in years past at that wide receiver position. Obviously, Stephon Diggs moving on. Gabe Davis also moved on before the start of the season. So they're looking to add a bit of talent. Personally, from my own point of view, I don't think they've done a whole lot of that. I don't think Amari Cooper is the answer. I saw him because he was playing against the Commanders the other week. I got to see him up close and personal. He didn't particularly astound me. A lot of drop balls, as most of the Browns wide receivers have. So I hope as he's winging his way over to New York that he figures out where his hands have gone and works it out. I don't know, guys. Rain, starting with you, do you think this is a good fit? I haven't seen yet what they've given up in order to get Amari Cooper here. Having seen what some of the other wide receivers have gone for, I'm not necessarily expecting a whole lot. But do you think this is maybe a cheap way to add a little bit of experience more than anything else to that Bills offense?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it is dependent on what the compensation will be at the end of the day. I don't think that's been broken just yet. But I mean, this trade would have been a lot more relevant maybe 4 or 5 years ago when Amari Cooper was at the height of his talent. We just see a comment coming in there. It was a 3rd-round pick. So that's a pretty cheap way of adding at least depth to that wide receiver room. I like what Hollins is doing over there. Keon Coleman seems to be a rookie with a lot of potential. So having that veteran presence in the room, such as Amari Cooper, is certainly going to add options to to Josh Allen's Arsenal. I was weirdly only looking at Amari Cooper's play over the last couple of weeks during the week, and the dude was checked out for the Browns. He was putting in absolutely zero effort, particularly on run plays with the Browns team. So obviously he had a feeling this was coming. The Browns had a feeling this was coming. So hopefully he can find a bit of spark with the Buffalo Bills and really kickstart his career again.
Yeah, Dara, thrown to you in terms of what the Bills really need on this offense. Yards per game, I'm just looking at the stats here while Rian was chatting. Yards per game, down in the lower half of the table, not usually where we expect them to be. The rush yards per game, not too bad. And points per game, not too bad. But it's clear that that offensive room, especially through the air, hasn't quite hit the heights that's expected of them. Obviously, Josh Allen is going to improve things on the ground with his ability to tuck it and run over players. Do you think this is where the Bills really needed help at the moment, or they just saw a chance to kind of swoop in, as Rian says, for a reasonable price, and it's kind of hard to say no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's what they needed. I know, Rian, you listed off some of the receivers that they have at the moment, but none of them are sort of household names that, he would need to be a true wide receiver one. I think they thought once they got rid of Stephon Diggs that they could do a sort of Tom Brady in New England situation, get any wide receiver off the street and Josh Allen will find them. That hasn't worked. So they need to get someone, and then Browns are obviously in sell now mode with their season circling the drain. I'm sure Amari Cooper is delighted to be away from Deshaun Watson and to be there with a true contender in the AFC for sure. Amari Cooper fantasy owners are having a great day right now, I'm assuming too. So I think it's a move that they had to make. Their run game has been very productive this year with not just Josh Allen but James Cook as well. We saw what was his name yesterday, because James Cook obviously did not play last night.
He missed his first game.
Yeah, they brought in someone else.
Was it Davis?
We thought it was going to be
Johnson.
Sorry,
Davis or Johnson?
Davis. They thought most people thought it was going to be Ty Johnson to take most of the workload, but instead it was Ray Davis was the one that rushed for 97 yards last night against the Jets. So it seems as though their running scheme is working. So it's just the passing game that needs to improve. Just looking at the numbers even from last night, Ray Davis was actually their top receiver as well as their top rusher with 55 yards, from 3 receptions. And the next person after that was Curtis Samuel with 38 yards 44. Dalton Kincaid with 51 yards from 6 receptions. And then you're looking at Curtis Samuel with 44 yards from 3 touches as well. So it's something that's going to have to improve. You get that wide receiver one that's going to get most of the attention from the defense. Maybe will help these other receivers like Coleman, Samuel, and Shakir to free up for them and to be able to contribute a little more. But the Bills want to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC this year. They have to go out and get wide receiver one, and that's what they've done here.
Yeah. Look, I think in any other year gone by, if this trade had gone through right before the show, you're kind of saying, look, there's not a whole lot of wide receiver ones that come available on the market. And you might argue he's maybe not a top 10 wide receiver one, but I do think he's had, at least in the past in his career, he's had to play that role. He knows what he needs to do. And the route tree is there. If he can get him motivated, if he can get his confidence back, I think there's a lot of good that can do to him. And I say on any normal circumstances, because of course, the big trade that did go through today was Davante Adams. It doesn't get much more wide receiver one than him. He can change almost any offense. Predictably, I think every talk show, whether it's a professional or amateur, predicted that if he was going to go, it was most likely going to be to Aaron Rodgers, even before it came out that Davante Adams essentially forced his way there. No big surprise, I think, and that is where he's ended up. So they've given, I believe, a 3rd round conditional for Davante Adams, gets him back with Aaron Rodgers, a 4th round conditional reign, gets him back with Aaron Rodgers. I think this is a very interesting one. Makes a lot of obvious sense given the past and the connection that they have. I think it makes the Jets have been this weird offense. We've spoke about it last week, Dara, myself, and yourself. So I'm going to throw to Reen first. We spoke about how weird the situation is, that the offense has a lot of very good talent on paper and was not performing. The defense was actually performing extremely well. They are up in like the top 5 or 6 in almost any metric in the league at the moment. They're playing at a championship level. Offense isn't. And one thing we noted between the pair of us was that the wide receivers are not on the same page. And as Aaron Rodgers is slowing down, maybe coming back, maybe just from age, he needs those receivers to be on the same page. We see it famously in these scramble drills, and the wide receivers maybe in the Jets just haven't got in tune. I don't think it'll take Davante Adams a whole lot to get back in tune with him. So, Ryan, a super valuable trade for the Jets. Do you think it makes an instant impact to the offense? Is there some betting in period, or is there some problems that you see that are underlying beyond what a Davante Adams can patch over just for the short term?
There are some issues there in that offense, insofar as I don't think the play calling is really up to scratch out there at the Jets. They seem to have a very predictable way of calling plays. They're relying too much on Breece Hall when he's underperforming to a certain extent this season. So they may be inclined to force the ball to Davante Adams a bit in the first few weeks, and I'm not sure how well that's going to go. He still needs to bed into the system. He needs to get back in tune with his quarterback, although back when they were at Green Bay, that was just a telepathic connection. They seemed to know exactly what each other were doing at any given time. What I think this trade really brings to the Jets is that kind of veteran presence in the wide receiver room, or the receiving core as a whole. Say, what I've noticed from the Jets is not so much that they're not on the same page as Aaron Rodgers. It's more so the drops and the inconsistency on a player by player basis within that team. I think a guy like Davante Adams, he seems to be a real team leader wherever he goes. I think he's going to be able to motivate these guys to come in, put in the work, show up early for training, get on the jugs machines, and really all get on the same page. So at least then they're giving Aaron Rodgers a chance. When the ball comes to you, you're going to make the catch and you're going to make those yards, because that's something that they've been missing so far. The amount of drops this season from the Jets has been beyond incredible.
Yeah, Darryl, obviously a sure pair of hands as well. And I go back to that same point we were making last week. Aaron Rodgers, another interception there last night on Monday Night Football. More than he is known for. He's obviously famously stingy with turning the ball over to the opposition. We also mentioned in terms of route running, he was up on the podium saying, I believe it was Mike Williams that apparently ran the wrong route for the Hail Mary at the end. I guess that connection cannot be overstated. Do you think it also helps the run game? We saw, what's his name? Woody something, the owner. I saw him give a clip and he said Woody Johnson, it opens up the whole offense. It changes the game in the run game. It changes the game in the passing game as well. Do you see it the same way, Rindu? Do you think there's a little bit more of an issue there that needs to be fixed in general? Or are you expecting an immediate bounce back? They come in against the 4-2 Steelers. An interesting proposition. They are favorites by 1.5 points at the moment. So I think that's quite interesting. How do you see this trade impacting the offensive future of the New York Jets?
It's strange. I think it's a real strange situation about what's going on in general. It's Robert Saleh getting sacked or losing his job. They don't give the interim head coach job to Nathaniel Hackett. They give it to the DC Jeff Ulrich, who then demotes Nathaniel Hackett from play calling, gives it to Todd Downing. And then they go out and lose the Monday Night Football, not necessarily all down to the offense. Greg Zuerlein missed 2 field goals in that game too, which has to be remembered. And then today they go out and get Davante Adams. Just when you are starting to build chemistry with Garrett Wilson as well. I think he went for over 100 yards last night. That's 2 weeks in a row he has. it's strange to me. It seems to honestly, and I know, the conspiracy is that Aaron Rodgers that's his team. He's running it. It's his decisions. This sort of leans into that he's kind of getting what he wants, but then also they take one thing away, Nathaniel Hackett, just to say, look, listen, we can't make it too obvious. There's a lot of pressure on this Jets team now to do something this year, because I don't know if Aaron Rodgers goes past this year. I don't know. I think Davante Adams has another year left on his deal after this. These aren't decisions that good teams make. These are decisions that desperate teams that want to be good make. And when you're chasing it like this, it never works. It never works at all. A good case study, and I've heard it a couple of times this week, is if you look at what they've done compared to the Lions and what they have done. Both teams were in the mire. Both teams were laughing stocks of the league. And they bring in head coaches and they just lean in. They leaned into Dan Campbell's philosophy in Detroit. They tried whatever they could to make a team, not necessarily in Robert Saleh's image, just that Robert Saleh was there. So it's just strange that it reeks of desperation. It reeks of panic. And look, what are they, 2-4 now? I still wouldn't be surprised if they have a losing record this year.
Yeah, I think my counterpoint to that is, and I think you're bang on, I think it does reek of desperation, but I think the source of that is almost certainly from the owner. I mentioned it last week when he was on the Hard Knocks. He seemed very involved. He wanted to have team meetings and really get in there, and we see him on TV now quite a lot. The Aaron Rodgers thing, I think it's a great story. I think it's...
Fionn, just very quickly. Rian, why don't you tell Fionn how good it is to have an owner as involved in the team?
Yeah, when you start talking about making decisions reeking of desperation, my mind immediately flew back to bringing in Stephon Gilmore in the middle of the season on a team that was just desperate. Like, they didn't have anybody, and they're like, yeah, we're going to get that little bit of duct tape that is Stephon Gilmore and stick it over the gaping hole that was the defense that season. I get where you're coming from, but for me, Davante Adams makes that team better. Full stop.
100%. And that's where I'm kind of driving at. I know there's the video of the push and everything at Saleh, but as you pointed out, Dara, Saleh wasn't the play caller. His guy was the play caller. So getting Saleh sacked didn't really make any sense, even from an Aaron Rodgers point of view. As we said, Saleh obviously famously defensively, and he had the defense humming. So I think it's interesting. I think certainly they leveraged Aaron Rodgers in order to get Davante Adams here. I'd say he did most of the driving on that. I find it hard to buy into the narrative on the negative side that Aaron Rodgers is pushing guys away. Because the weird thing about Aaron Rodgers is he's a bit too honest, right? He has this show, or we have to assume it, but he has this the part of the show on the Pat McAfee show where he does the interviews. He gets up on the stadium and he calls out by name the wide receiver that, in his opinion, ran the wrong route. So I'm kind of saying if there was Robert Saleh issues, I feel like we would have overtly seen like, no, there wasn't an issue, but he made the wrong call here, all right? We agreed not to do that. And we didn't really see a hint of that. It kind of came sudden. So that's where that is. I'm going to move on now. Obviously, Davante Adams, big story. We'll have to catch, as I mentioned, how they get on. Steelers, I believe, in New York will be an interesting, because they are kind of a very up and down team.
Steelers in Pittsburgh.
Oh, in Pittsburgh. Interesting. Interesting that the Jets are favored for that. I would kind of see it. I don't think the Steelers are, again, they're on that 4-2. I don't know if they're quite justified.
You know why?
It's a very good...
Because Russ is taking first team reps in practice this week with a view to start.
What are we thinking? A 2-interception game for Mr. Wilson?
I don't think he's going to have a very long 3 interceptions.
George Pickens running at 1/4 speed and the ball bounces off the helmet or something like that. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Anyway, tough call. Speaking of changes at the quarterback, the big one that most people were, well, I don't think keeping their eye on because the Pats have been playing so poorly this season. But one of the big news stories coming into the week was that Drake May got the nod to take over from Jacoby Brissett in New England Patriots. Rian, I don't know if you saw much of it. He threw for 243, 20 of 33, did throw 2 interceptions, but also threw 3 touchdowns. So not the worst day considering how poor that Pats O-line is. Obviously didn't get the win, got fairly handily smacked by the Houston Texans. But I think in a way positive for him, but I would argue, and I think we're in agreement on this one, that the argument for not playing Drake May is not necessarily that he wouldn't be ready to play ball. It's more that when your team is so poor, are you really setting him up for the career success by playing him in a few extra games this season when you have essentially your tackle dummy in a quarterback for the start of the season? Anything change your mind based on how Drake May performed over the weekend?
No, to be honest, we obviously talked about this in the group chat last week, and for me, I'm not seeing the same positivity as other people. Like, he's a rookie, right? He's gonna have tough games, but for me, the touchdowns, he did have one in the first half, very nice touchdown, but he did a lot of his playing from 3 scores down, right? That's when the Texans will have their foot off the accelerator a little bit. His pocket presence and his pocket awareness just didn't scream elite quarterback to me. And he didn't protect himself enough when he was running the football. Now, he is a very athletic, very strong guy, but he's not Cam Newton. So he does need to protect himself when he does decide to get himself downfield. As a rookie, particularly, he needs to do that because he needs to survive to his second season, right? We're going to see probably issues with Anthony Richardson's game moving forward. If he continues to get himself injured season on season, he needs to learn how to protect himself. But yeah, I mean, like, it wasn't the worst rookie debut I've ever seen, but it certainly didn't scream future of the Patriots. It definitely did not indicate to me that they were going to get another 1 or 2 wins off the back of Drake May starting versus Jacoby Brissett. I think Jacoby Brissett gives the same chance of winning in that offense. No disrespect to Drake May. In that offense, Jacoby Brissett gives the same chance of winning.
Yeah, Dara, I think that I agree with Rian on that one. I've noticed here, I'm pulling up the stats. New England hovering at a not too shabby defensively 23.8 points per game, in around the same kind of level as the Cleveland Browns, Washington, the Saints. It's not an insurmountable amount of points to be conceding, but your offense has to be playing very well. Unfortunately, Drake May, he led the team in rushing. Not a particular surprise, as Rian said, down 3 scores and a few field goals pretty quickly. Not the ideal scenario to actually get a sense of what he is. I remember Belichick, when he first came out doing the draft evaluation, it was getting his feet settled and being able to play with a calm pocket presence on a platform and being able to make the throws. The wide receiver room, I got to be honest, I'm not sure I can name a single Patriots wide receiver right now in that receiver room. What do you expect?
Smith-Schuster? Is he still there?
No, I think he's back with the Chiefs.
He's gone to the Chiefs, yeah.
Oh.
After his dropsy season. Remember, he dropped it in the playoffs, like in the middle of the pitch or whatever. So, Dara, I guess just to round out the point, the question to you is, now that Drake May is playing, what would you like to see? We obviously, hopefully, you're going to have a run game. I mean, Stevenson's not the worst running back to have in there behind him. He's been able to get some hard yards in the past. But what can the Patriots do to make his life a little bit more comfortable between now and the end of the season?
Yeah, and it was tough as well because Stevenson was not playing on Sunday too with injury. So that kind of made, obviously probably their best offensive piece missing is not great for your debut. My sort of view on it, controversial, maybe, I don't know, hot take-ish, I don't know, but I would have kept Brissett in and I would have let the team tank. Not because I don't think Drake May is good enough, but if you have a bad season and let's say they get the 1st or 2nd overall pick next year, they don't need to spend that on a quarterback. They have their quarterback. They can sell that for a king's ransom. Look at what the Bears got off the Panthers for pick number 1. And then they can set up their team for the future that
They
way.
picked a couple of bums.
They oh no, look, I'm not saying that they picked the right guys. I'm not saying they will, but
They certainly got a
it's
king's ransom.
Well, look, listen. I just think that it's a panic move, I think, more from GM and owner saying we need to get some wins, we need to get some excitement, because the fans are just falling asleep probably in their seats, getting yelled at, only waking up when the opposing fans are cheering for another touchdown or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think like just for a little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain, I think would be more favorable if I was a Patriots fan. Like, go through the season. If Brissett gets you wins, he gets you wins, but he's not going to get you many. And then you have Drake May, and like I mentioned on the show about sitting quarterbacks for a while rookie quarterbacks, for a while to get accustomed to the league. Let him sit. Let him sit the full season. Let him get another full off season with the Patriots, who then, like I said, they could even pick someone with their top pick if they wanted to, or sell it. It's up to them. But I just think for the future, it might have been better to keep Brissett. Maybe Drake May won't win any games either, and they still get that sort of scenario too. But yeah,
you've hurt your future quarterback, right? You've hurt your future quarterback by putting him in if he's not going to get the wins, because now his confidence is damaged. It's a lose-lose situation.
I just don't know how many times teams need to see situations like the Packers and the advantages of not playing even your first round pick straight away, and the damage it can do repetitively. Like Darnold, I think, is a prime example of what might have been if he got to rest and come through. Like, playing on poor teams gives you poor reputation and doesn't allow you to build the kind of management that fundamentally, no matter what your skill set is, every NFL player or NFL quarterback needs to be able to do. Understand when the check down is the number 1, throw away is number 2, and then the deep ball is the last option that you go to. And I think that's something they're losing by pushing on. We had only really scheduled to talk about Drake May for a little bit. I wanted to raise something I saw on Instagram just before I came on, and it's another quarterback thing. And Rain, as you know, one of my least favorite, I'm obviously a bit of a hater when it comes to the NFL, but one of my least favorite quarterbacks in the league at the moment, Kirk Cousins. I saw a video that said we're about to enter, 2 weeks ago, we entered Kirktober, which is Kirk Cousins plays unreal ball for the month of October every single season, and then disappears off the face of the earth again. And he is now in 2 games in October he's played. He's got over 700 passing yards. He's got 5 touchdowns to 1 interception. And he's obviously 2-0 with a 36-30 win against the Buccaneers and then a 38-20 win against the Panthers. Upcoming games, they have the Seahawks next, so they're about to hit the buzzsaw that is Kirktober. And then they wrap up October with a second game against the Buccaneers. So I had to laugh. I really don't like him. I think he's awful in prime time. I think he really disappointed the Washington franchise. But now we're coming into Kirktober. What do you think? You've obviously not seen that video. So what's your reaction to those stat lines? And are we going to see an absolute annihilation of the Seahawks this weekend?
It's an utterly bizarre stat line, to be honest. And I think with the way the Seahawks are at the moment, they have a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. We could be up for another Kirk Cousins masterclass in this game. They don't really have the pass rush at the moment, the Seahawks. And if you give Kirk Cousins time, he's going to find someone. Like, they have good receivers out there in Atlanta. I have Darnell Mooney on my fantasy team, and he's been doing excellently. And he shouldn't be a number 1 or number 2 receiver. He's just not that anymore. But yeah, he's been doing great. So yeah, we might end up seeing it. And another weird one is, I think Kirk Cousins had 2 primetime games this season and won both of them pretty convincingly. So yeah.
And he's not even in the MVP conversation. That's outrageous. Last time he did any kind of winning, he was in the MVP conversation all the way to the end. Dara, is the sweat appearing on your brow now ahead of Sunday, now that you know this fantastic new stat?
I'm more worried about the rushing attack of the Falcons than I am the passing attack of the Falcons.
I thought you were going to say I'm more worried about the injury report, because apparently the Seahawks are the only team that gets injured these days, and that's why they're 3-3.
The injuries actually should be all right. The Seahawks have had a mini bye since playing on Thursday, so
good. Okay.
Hopefully we get some guys back. It has a setup of another sort of Lions game where it's a toing and froing, you score, we score sort of scenario, because the Falcons defense are almost probably just as bad as the Seahawks. They are ranked only one place better in run defense, and they are 20th, I believe, in pass defense. They have the lowest pressure rate as well in the NFL, so their D-line can't get home on quarterbacks either. So, and Gino loves playing in domes because obviously no win makes everything easier. Yeah, it's a game, especially with ones coming up against the Bills straight after it, and then the Rams straight after that. It's a game that they're going to need to win.
Yeah.
To stop the bleeding, stop the slide, get some positivity back. It's going to be tough going to Atlanta, playing the early game as well. So it's going to be like 10 a.m. Seattle time by the time they kick off. So it's going to be tough. But look, listen, as long as I see improvement, as long as there's improvement from the defense from the last couple of weeks, as long as they're able to make the QB throw an incompletion, I'll be happy. As long as they can stop the run for a couple of drives, I'll be happy. And then if we can get some consistency on offense in terms of against the Giants, they never ran the ball. And against the 49ers, they didn't stop running the ball. And in both scenarios, the offense got nowhere. Let's get some balance here, guys. And that's all I want. Get some balance on offense, get some stops on defense. And I couldn't care then about the score after that.
Well, look, anytime we bring up the Seahawks on this show, we're liable to go on for hours. But I will thank the audience for sticking with us, because this time I actually did it for the beautiful segue that it's giving me into one of our last segments, which is teams that are 3-3. And I want to discuss, there's 5 teams at the moment, Seahawks being one of them. I want to see what you guys think. Obviously, we're 6 games in. You've had your September. That's the new preseason. Everyone's saying we're 2 games into October now. You're staring down the barrel of November, where football games really need to be won and lost, and you've kind of got a sense of where the league is. So 5 teams sitting at 3-3 there: the San Francisco 49ers, Indianapolis Colts, Denver Broncos, Dallas Cowboys, and the aforementioned Seattle Seahawks. So, Rian, I'm going to throw to you, aside from the Seahawks, and essentially what I'm wondering is, in that little mini list, who stands out to you as the most interesting in terms of who can drive forward from their 500 position now and really attack not just the playoffs, but really drive to be a contender? A couple of big names in there, a couple of kind of lower names that are maybe doing well to be at that mark at this stage of the season. Which of those teams jumps out at you?
Well, I mean, the easy answer there is the San Francisco 49ers. They're probably the best 3-3 team ever to have existed in terms of their overall talent. Now, they do have some kind of issues on the defensive side of the football that, I mean, it's not unfixable, but they're conceding a little bit too much for my liking at the moment, losing some games that they shouldn't be losing. But they seem to be on the up and up, and they've got back some of their more prominent figures on that offensive side of the ball. They lost Debo for a little bit. They lost Kittle for a little bit. Those guys are coming back into the fray now. Obviously, being without Christian McCaffrey is a huge, huge loss for that offense. He contributes so much on a weekly basis to that team. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they move forward without him. But, I mean, his replacement has been doing absolutely fine in that offense, and Brock Purdy seems to be on course to have another Brock Purdy season. Al will still tell you he's below average quarterback, but he seems to be one of the best around. He's going to make the playoffs. He's going to probably go deep into the playoffs, and he might end up at another Super Bowl. And at that point, you really need to start talking about Brock Purdy as a major contender, as one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, Dara, on an anti-49ers platform, as you like to run on, what has your assessment been of Brock Purdy? Because I have seen in a lot of the media this same accusation being leveled at him, like, oh, he's returned to baseline now. His kind of management has gone, and we've seen him struggle through a couple of losses. But obviously, one of those was against the buzzsaw that has been the Vikings so far this season. A couple of good wins, I would argue, as well, and I think. Despite the loss to the Cardinals as well, which they'll be disappointed at, the bounce back this week was pretty good against the Seahawks, 36 points. You saw it up close, I presume. What did you make of his performance, and are you still convinced that he's regressing to the mean a little bit?
No. I think he's taking a step up. I think that one thing that is not spoken enough about is his ability to run and evade pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Seahawks had more QB pressures in that game last week than the 49ers, and you wouldn't think it by looking at the game, but it was Brock Purdy's ability to evade, to get out, to roll out, to keep away from the D-line that prolonged drives and ultimately led to scoring opportunities for the team. So I begrudgingly say no, he actually has been improving this year, nicely under the radar. See, the thing is with Brock, he's not to be disrespectful, maybe a little bit, but he just looks like he's just a guy. You know, there's no, not redeemable, but there's no standout feature of him that would be like that would cause him to be like Mahomes and his marketability, Lamar with his running,
But he has that great ad where he runs up a hill for 5 minutes and then says something indiscernible at the end.
I've never even seen that ad. I can't even tell you. I've never even seen that.
It's some insurance ad I see on Game Pass every so often.
But you know what I mean? He's just a guy. Like he looks like he's just a guy. The football looks like it's huge in his hands and everything. He looks like he shouldn't be there, but he's playing so well. And I hate the fact that the 49ers should be struggling so much, spending all that draft capital on Trey Lance to go nowhere. But the guy that they got with the last pick of the draft in that same year ends up being their QB1, who hopefully, fingers crossed, is going to cost him a bomb and, regrets the team a little bit when they actually have to pay him. But at the moment, yeah, he's the reason why that team is 3-3 and not gotten any worse, because Christian McCaffrey's out. Brendan Ayuk has gotten his contract and stayed at home because he's not there anymore. George Kittle's had injury issues. The O-line has dealt with injury issues as well. But the constant in that is Brock Purdy and his high-level play, and I commend it and hate it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting stats that came out, I don't know if it was this week, it might have been last week, but Brock Purdy came out and talked about his athleticism on the stand in front of the media, and he goes, go look at the tape. My 10 yards is better than Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. And he was like a 100th of a second or whatever better than the two of them over the first 10 yards of the 40-yard dash at the combine. The dude is super athletic. And when you were talking about a guy who goes under the radar, who doesn't seem like he has any physical traits that you're like, yeah, that's what makes him the perfect quarterback. That's very reminiscent of Tom Brady, who won 7 Super Bowls or whatever he did. Tom Brady never was the biggest arm or the fastest runner or anything like that, but he had that mentality, that consistency, and I think that's something that really pops up in Brock Purdy's play.
Yeah, I think moving on from the San Francisco 49ers, I think the team that jumps out to me the most from that list was the second one, the Indianapolis Colts. And I think it's hugely interesting what they're going to have to do at quarterback, because I don't know anyone that will compare the athleticism of Richardson to Joe Flacco. However, Anthony Richardson has not played a lot of football, full stop. Didn't play a lot of college, hasn't completed a lot of games in the NFL. You're 3-3. You're behind the Houston Texans at 5-1. It's going to be a mountain to climb to win that division and guarantee yourself a playoff spot that way. So you're essentially racing for the wild card spots. Now you're not a mile off. 3-3 puts you right on the bubble at the moment for that wild card spot. My issue is if you're in a winning position after 8 games, basically halfway through the season, what would have used to be halfway through the season, my argument is you leave Joe Flacco in there. We saw his limitations last week. He did not play well against the Tennessee Titans, managed to get a win. The week before, he looked much, much better. They've got some key games coming up. They're going to be facing the Dolphins without Tua, so they're going to have to win that one. And then they've got the Texans. You'd imagine that's a rollover for the Texans, but we keep saying it on this show, divisional games are just different. They don't always follow the script. And then he's got the Vikings. So there's going to be 3 very difficult games. I just see, from what I've seen of Richardson, you've got that 60-yard bomb he threw off platform falling down, and he can do that at any given moment. The problem is he is not careful enough with the ball. He's still too raw. And I think when you're coming in facing these, I'm just looking now what they've got down the stretch. Jags, Giants, Titans, and Broncos. I think they are winnable games where you're going to want your experienced, careful quarterback take care of the ball, win the games, because the offense you have should win you those games based on the evidence we've seen so far this season. And that's why you kind of keep Richardson on the bench, give him another half a season. He already missed so much football, but just give him another half of a season to 1, take reps in practice, 2, heal up as much as you can. And you're going to have to come up with a game plan long-term to be able to play this. You mentioned this earlier on, Rain. If you don't figure out how to play Anthony Richardson, you're going to lose him mighty quick at kind of an RG3 situation. And that's going to be a problem for the Colts going forward. A little bit of a rant there. Has that brought up any points for you guys? Where do you think the Colts should go? Rain, I'm going to throw to you first in terms of quarterback for the remainder of the season. Do you think as soon as Richardson comes back, he's got to get back into that squad?
So what I would say is it has to be a careful they have to proceed carefully with Anthony Richardson, right? So over this 3-game stretch that you are mentioning where they have a lot of tough opposition, maybe just keep that injury going for a little while longer, make sure he's 100%. But the realistic, so where the Colts are aiming this season is going to be playoffs, right? Joe Flacco in the playoffs is fine, but does he give you the same possibility of winning a game as Anthony Richardson? I don't think he does. I think Anthony Richardson's physical traits and capabilities, the fact that he can throw a 60-yard bomb, the fact that he can run for 40 yards and truck over a guy, I think that is better suited to playoff football than Joe Flacco. So I think they need to get him back in the game, but I would not be rushing back into it. Like you said, Joe Flacco does represent a quarterback that can win games in the NFL, but I think Anthony Richardson, with his freak athleticism, gives you a better chance of winning in the playoffs. And I think that's where the Indianapolis Colts are at the moment. So I would be saying, don't bench him for the season. Bring him back, but make sure he's ready and healthy and 100% fit to get you through those playoff games.
Dara, I propose to you the old switcheroo. Joe Flacco from 50 yards and back. As soon as you cross the halfway line and in the playoffs, boom, Anthony Richardson gets in. He blows the game wide open. How do you respond to that?
It's not a bad show. It's not a bad show. We see some college teams run like 2 QB looks. Maybe we should start looking at that. Maybe.
Did you see the one that did the double flip spin thing where it's like going to snap to one and it's flipped and snap to the other?
Yep. That's the one I was referring to. But for me, the Colts' biggest issue isn't trying to pick either Richardson or Flacco. It's their defense. Their defense is awful. You know, they allowed Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, like a terrible Trevor Lawrence and the Jags team beat them and put like 40 points on them. Caleb Williams and the Bears were thrown all over them earlier on in the season. You know, even Will Levis was looking good at times last week against this defense. They really have to sort that out. And I know they have a few injuries, but you know, you have teams here now starting to go into the fire sale mode before the trade deadline. Try and get some defensive piece here, defensive piece there, trying to get something, because if they want to make the playoffs, if they want to challenge the Texans for this division, they need to sort that defense out, because once the Texans come along and play them again, I should say, they'll wipe the floor with them. And I think that it won't matter if you choose Flacco or Richardson for the rest of the year.
Yep.
Well,
I think
on that point though, the team that the Indianapolis Colts put up their best performance against was the Texans. They nearly won that game early on in the season. Now, I know it was early on in the season and teams are still finding their footing, but they did put it up to the Texans. And there is that opportunity.
By conceding 29 points.
I mean, yeah, so the defense does need to be looked at, certainly. But when you have a guy like Anthony Richardson in that team, particularly in that AFC South where things are just mental at the best of times, anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. But like, even just, I'm on to the Colts page here at the moment. I'm just having a look at it. So, you know, week 1, they conceded 29. You know, okay, week 2, they conceded 16 to Malik Willis and the Packers. You know, it wasn't even Jordan Love. They conceded, okay, so they only conceded 16 against the Bears. They conceded 24 against the Steelers, 37 against the Jaguars, and then, okay, 17 against the Titans. But I don't have the exact stats, but even just from the eye test, you could probably see from the Colts that the defense is the issue. And it's like, I kind of like the Colts. And like, when it comes to everyone has like a team in the other conference that they like, and the AFC, the Colts are my one, and you kind of want them to do well. They should be able to do well, but I don't know. It's just something not working out. And now the fact that Flacco is playing as well, and that he comes in, and when Richardson plays, he's inaccurate, as anything. It's tough. It's going to be a tough decision, and I think it's going to split the fan base, and it might split the team.
Yeah. Look, something to keep our eye on as the season goes forward. They are the two that really stood out to us at 3-3 that we're going to watch and see how they can progress. Obviously, the San Francisco 49ers probably expected to kick on. And we here think the Indianapolis Colts don't have an outside chance. Like, they've got a pretty good chance of trying to make the playoffs. It's going to be about managing that roster, getting the quarterback hot and in the right position at the right time during the season, as we said. Just as we wrap up the show, lads, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the slate of games that we've got going on this Sunday. Some absolute crackers. In the early window on Sunday, you've got Lions Vikings. Then in the late window, you've got Chiefs 49ers. And then Sunday night, you've got that Jets game, Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers reunited. And that's pretty much it then. The Monday night games, nothing particularly to write home about, but some very interesting football.
I don't know. That Baltimore-Tampa Bay game, that's it. That's a bit of a sleeper.
Yeah, it might be. I think what I'll be watching out for the most is how legit are the Ravens. Their offense looked excellent, granted against not a particularly brilliant Commanders defense, but that was kind of the second game in a row they got Derrick Henry nice and fed. He started rolling and he's looking super dangerous. If they can do that again, I think the Buccaneers are probably one of the stiffer tests they've faced defensively in the last couple of weeks, as far as I can remember. So, yeah, I think you're right there. I think that could be a very interesting one, and it might have some implications. Obviously, towards the end of the season, both teams sitting at 4-2 now. You want to keep that momentum going. A lot of wins you can pick up in this stretch of the season that are going to mean a lot towards the end when the games get really tight. Except, obviously, as we said, the Colts, who we just realized seem to have one of the easier walk-ins to the end of the season this season. They're going to have to play all their games with the front-loaded schedule, I think.
Also, the big brother v brother clash that we're not speaking about.
Which one is that? No. Who's that? You're going to have to remind me of that one.
The Commanders against the Panthers.
Oh, you mean the fans? I thought two brothers were playing against each other. And I immediately jumped to Harbaugh, but I was like, no, wait, we just talked about one of the Harbaugh teams that he's not playing the other Harbaugh. Hopefully they don't give me too much drama. I'd like one season where we just beat the teams we're supposed to beat. And look, we're going to have shootouts against the Ravens. I'm not too worried about that. But Rain, you want to put anything on the line for this? Or is that a bit unfair?
What is there to put on the line?
Exactly. That's what I was wondering. I was thinking it'd be a bit rough on you now to be expected to put anything on the line. Maybe your mortgage. You can put your mortgage on the line.
If you can start playing it if you want, man.
Nothing can possibly go wrong. And I'll be repainting that back wall some nice shade of burgundy sometime soon. Anyway, guys.
Well, I'll tell you, if you can get me a Commanders jersey, I'll hang it up in the back if they beat the Panthers. Because I'm sneaky confident about that game.
Interesting. It is. Look, the Commanders are always one for a little banana skin. We like to do that every so often. And
I have a Commanders jersey. I'll hang it up if they win.
There we go. Right. Replace it with the Newton jersey. I think that'd be pretty good. Anyway, lads, thanks very much for joining us. Pretty good show today. Lots to keep your eye out. Obviously, guys, as we say every week, please do engage with us throughout the show. And also on all the social medias, particularly X, Twitter, and Instagram as well. We're pretty active on those. So let us know what you think. If you've got one of those 3-3 teams that stands out to you, if you want to just bury the Dallas Cowboys, we didn't have time to do that. I think it's a bit of low-hanging fruit this week, but we might reach into the pocket again and start burying them again next week. Please do. If you like your podcasts in audio form, you can find this podcast and all the other podcasts we've done over the years on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Continue to follow us here on YouTube. If you're following us, you are tuning in and you enjoy it, please do hit subscribe. It helps us. We're trying to drive the numbers up at the moment, drive the followers up on YouTube right now. So please do join us. And of course, you can find us at Under Center Podcast X and Instagram as well to join the conversation, follow our stories. And as soon as we get the breaking news, we'll pass it on to you. So if you're not bet onto your phone, we are the best place in Ireland to find your NFL news. And we also provide the hottest takes, the most in-depth analysis, and the hottest, spiciest waffles that you can find anywhere on the island of Ireland and further beyond in terms of the NFL. So thanks again for listening in today. We will be back next week for another show as we continue to keep our eye on the NFL. Lads, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And we'll see you again next week.